Thank you. So let's dive into today's webinar outlook on European soya in 2025, presented to you by Donau Soja. And I am happy to first shortly introduce to you our organization and our work. As some of today's participants are not yet members of the Donau Soja Association, so I will use this opportunity to provide you a brief introduction to our association and our areas of work. So Donau Soja is a non-profit, independent and member-based association. On the right side, you see a map with our locations. We have our headquarters in Vienna, where we are calling from today. We have an office in Novi Sad, Serbia, in Chisinau, Moldova, and an office in Kiev in Ukraine. We are supported by 24 EU governments through the Donau Soja and Europe Soja Declaration. So you can see we have a very broad also political support for our vision and mission. At the moment, we count 339 members from 33 countries from Europe and beyond, and our network is growing with every year. We have 900 certified partners, certified according to the Donau Soja and Europe Soja standard, and over 10,000 farmers in our system. So we are a huge network, and I'm really happy that we are growing every year. I also want to mention that we are supported by the Austrian Development Agency within the Strategic Partnership Program for Sustainable Non-GM and European Crop Production, meaning that our work has been recognized by development aid as our efforts bring benefits to the development of regions outside the EU, such as Ukraine, Serbia, Moldova, Bosnia. Okay. Then to the core of our work. What is our vision and mission exactly? Our vision is a sustainable, safe, and European protein supply. How do we want to achieve that? We are supporting our partners and members in progressing change to address social, environmental, and economic challenges in soya production and consumption. This should increase efficiency, fairness, and sustainability in European food and feed protein value chains. And how are we achieving this? We are active in a variety of areas of work, starting from credible standard systems with the Donau Soja and Europe Soja standards, but also other standards in development. We are active in supply chain development and building up the market for soya in Europe. We are active in advocacy policy, knowledge transfer to farmers and businesses, in communication, organizing events. We have a certification scheme, as mentioned, and are also working in quality management, doing sustainability assessments, providing market insights and data, like with today's webinar, and also with our monthly market reports. We're active in science, innovation, and supporting analytical tools for soy. And last but not least, network building with members and partners. So now we are a huge network, as I mentioned, of over 300 members, and we are meeting frequently online and offline. And this leads me to the last slide from this beginning part. If you want to join us as a member, this is what you will get. You will be part of an extensive network of businesses and soy experts. You can strengthen your network and get informed with our international and regional events, with our frequent online meetings for members, and matchmaking support. Also, we provide market insights with the monthly market reports on the non-GM soy sector, and you will get insights from our soy experts. We're doing joint communication activities, and most importantly, you will work with us together on the European protein transition. You can scan the QR code on the top right to get more information. Okay, and I think that's enough with the promotion. I want to hand over to my dear colleague, Chris. Chris is Director of Advocacy and Sustainability at Donau Soja, and he will tell us about the European protein gap and what we can do to close it. So handing over to you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Veronica, for the introduction, and also welcome from my side to everyone. I'm really happy to see the interest in the registration for this webinar. And this fits to a general trend we see in the last couple of weeks and months, this increasing interest in European soy because of the global situation that we are in at the moment, but we will come to that in a couple of slides. So first, we look at the bigger picture. What is the protein gap and the linked challenge to closing the gap? So why are we doing all this work on European soy? Well, soy is one of the most important protein sources we have for human consumption, but especially for animal feed, because most of the global soy is used as animal feed. On the right-hand side, you can see in the EU, we consume about 35 million tons of soy every year, but we produce here in the EU only about 8%. And this is the so-called protein gap. That means we are really highly dependent on imports, and especially imports from only 2 countries, and both of these countries have their own challenges. A bit more than half of the soy we import comes from the US. And in the last couple of months or weeks, with this trade conflict with the US and potential import tariffs on US soy, many companies get very nervous because, like I said, the most soy we import comes from the US. So if we increase the import tariffs on US soy, that means that US soy gets much more expensive. And then there's also in the US, there are talks on the so-called US Protect Act, which would prohibit US companies from reporting sustainability requirements for laws from other countries. This is, for example, targeted against the EU Supply Chain Act, the so-called CSDDD. But there are also lawyers that read that act as if the UDR comes into application, it might be kind of an import ban for US soy. However, this act is not in application yet. This is just talks in the US or like a draft at the moment. And as I said, the other country, no, I didn't say that yet, but the other country is Brazil and some other South American countries where we import a lot of soy, and there still a lot of land conversion for new agricultural areas and especially for soy goes on. And especially in the Cerrado region in Brazil, which is also called the most biodiverse savanna in the world. That means even when the EUDR, the deforestation regulation, comes into application, the land conversion in the Cerrado would basically go on because most parts are not the forest, but the savanna. That means our consumption here is directly connected to land conversion in other parts of the world. And because of the amount we import, makes the EU the second largest importer of deforestation globally. And in general, this high import dependency, especially on only 2 countries, is a risk for the resilience and for our food security here in the EU. I think most people like most companies can relate to if you have only 2 suppliers for one of your most important raw materials, and you really need both of them to be able to get everything you want. Most companies understand that this is a strategic risk for the company. And this is basically the situation that we are in the EU. The positive thing is that the new commission and the new commissioner Hansen also see that as a risk, and in the vision for the future of the agriculture, this is also identified that the EU has to work on. So, yeah, let's go to the next slide. The good thing is if we look at other important agricultural products, we achieve more than 100% self-sufficiency in the EU. Especially important for us is now the parts for cereals, because soy can be grown in similar fields, similar environments like wheat and maize. That means if we grow more soy, we can grow it on areas where cereals are grown without actually having to import cereals because we have more than 100% self-sufficiency. And to increase the self-sufficiency is really important. Climate change will get worse, will make yields unstable, more droughts, more floodings, etc. COVID has shown how dangerous long and opaque and global supply chains can be when you have to rely on them. The war against Ukraine, Ukraine is not only for soy, but especially for soy, the most important agricultural producer in Europe. Now this trade conflict with the US, and it's very unlikely that there will be less crisis in the future. That means we need to do more here to ensure our food security. And also, if you look at the crop rotation in different areas, if you have to go down to the bottom to see Europe and the EU with the share of soybeans and pulses in crop rotation. In the EU, we have only about 4% soybeans and pulses together, which means our food system is way too cereal heavy. And that has several negative impacts. If you grow the same or similar crops over and over again, more fungi, more diseases, more pests, more insects that damage these crops accumulate, and you need more and more pesticides, and you are in a kind of a downwards spiral. In other parts of the world where we import a lot of soy from, like Brazil, Argentina, the US, the picture is completely different. They have way too much soy in the crop system. Monocultures of soy also lead to negative impacts. That means it has not only strategic benefits, it has also environmental and agricultural benefits to include more legumes and soy in the agriculture in Europe. So let's have a closer look at that, starting at the local level. Including legumes and soy into the crop rotation in Europe would improve crop rotation. Legumes are nitrogen-fixing plants. That means it's good for the soil. They also make the soil structure better. And the nitrogen is also partly saved in the soil after the soy and the legumes are harvested. That means that has positive effects on the nitrogen cycles. It is less nitrogen fertilizer needed not only for the soy, but also for the crop that is planted after the soy. That means in general, less nitrogen input means less nitrogen output, less leakage, for example, in water bodies. Many EU countries have issues with too much nitrogen in rivers, but also in groundwater supply, the water that we want to drink. Further systematic improvements is a diverse crop rotation, including legumes, or legumes serve as a break crop. That means if you have a longer period of time between the same kind of crop, the pests and the damaging insects, etc., that are specialized on that kind of crop will decrease until you plant it again. And that means less pesticides are needed for the next crop as well. And also, like mentioned before, it relieves the pressure of natural ecosystems in other parts of the world where still a lot of land conversion for soy cultivation takes place. And this is why we call European soy a game changer with strategic benefits. As mentioned before, it would increase the resilience of our supply chain and of our food system here in Europe because we are so dependent on imports. It is good for the environment. It helps on local and systemic levels to improve the soil, less pesticides and fertilizers, but also relieve the pressure on natural ecosystems. It adds value to our local economy because the production and the processing stays in Europe. And it's ready for upscaling. The knowledge and the inputs are available. Processing infrastructure is ready. Just look at our members, how many members we have in Europe on all parts of the supply chain. And especially soy grows well in Europe. And this is what we see here. The countries globally with the highest soy yields, 5 of the top 10 are located in Europe. You have Italy, you have Austria and Germany and Croatia. And if you see the EU as a whole, it's also still in the top 10. On the right-hand side, you can see the average yields, the average soy yields over the last 5 years. But what you can also see in some Central and Eastern European countries, the yields are quite low, much lower than the potential in these areas would be. And this is what we call what we call the yield gap. And this is also something we work on to increase this yield gap, but not with more fertilizer or pesticides, but good agricultural practices, knowing what to do and when to do it, and also better adapted varieties. And this is something my colleague will tell you later more about because it's part of our work in the different offices. So looking at the more positive parts, in the last 10 years, we, like Europe, increased soy production of 80%, which is really amazing development. And a lot of that is thanks to Ukraine. Ukraine is not only the biggest soy producer, it is also still increasing the soy production, even despite the war against Ukraine in the last couple of years. So this is really good developments, and you can later look into more details here in this single EU countries. But for now, I will leave that and have a look into how did we manage to increase it so much. There were some policies in place, some national or regional protein plant strategies, subsidies as part of the common agricultural policy, for example. Farmers realized that it actually has benefits to include legumes in the crop rotation. There were economic reasons, for example, fertilizer and energy costs were going up, which benefits crops that need less fertilizer, for example. But also in the last couple of years, breeding of soy varieties made really big steps forward. A lot of new, better adapted varieties are on the market for regions where soy was not where it was not worth growing soy before. Now you can be grown soy with stable and good yields, and also sustainability requirements. There are many national soy initiatives, retailers, and industry agreements that committed to deforestation-free, conversion-free, sustainably certified soy supply chains. Carbon reduction, for example, as part of the Science-Based Targets initiative became more and more important. And here, European soy has a lower carbon footprint, lower supply chains, transparent supply chains, and also especially the Donau Soja carbon values are especially low and traceable to the field. The topic of regionality got more and more important over the last years, and of course also plant-based foods, where soy is one of the main ingredients. And now looking ahead, what is the potential? First, starting in the European Union. Like I said before, soy grows in similar areas as wheat and maize. So if we look at the suitable areas for soy cultivation, about 1 to 2 million additional hectares of soybean can be grown in the EU, which would double the self-sufficiency in the EU. And this is exclusively on already existing fields, meaning no deforestation, no land conversion. And it would be included in crop rotations, which would have positive environmental effects. And it would be included instead of maize and instead of wheat, where we already have more than 100% self-sufficiency, meaning we would still be self-sufficient with other crops, but could increase the self-sufficiency in soy. And also working on higher yields with better adapted varieties, knowledge sharing, etc., also helps to increase yields without replacing anything. So there are a couple of positive messages here. And if we look on Europe in general, our vision and this best case scenario shows that we can achieve up to 50% self-sufficiency when we look at Europe as a continent. This is the best case scenario, and the consumption part, the gray part, is currently not going down as steep as expected here. But if we look at the sustainable imports, like I mentioned before, many retailers and industry agreements and national soy initiatives committing to sustainable soy supply chains increase. Therefore, the share of sustainable imports, and especially if we look at the European production, we can see that we are on quite a good track as predicted in this forecast to about in a couple of years, according to this forecast, we want to achieve 15 million tons of European soy per year. And how it looks for that in 2025, we will see in about 2 slides how to achieve this vision of a safe and sustainable protein supply in Europe. For that, Donau Soja has already in 2018 published this protein strategy for Europe. That means it covers 5 different areas where Europe as a whole, on EU level, on national level, on regional level, on company level, needs to work on to achieve this vision and a higher self-sufficiency rate. The first pillar is sustainable and responsible imports. Second pillar is, of course, increased European production, which is where Donau Soja focuses its work on. Pillar 3 is improved use of existing and new protein sources. Fourth pillar is increased efficiency of protein use. And the fifth pillar is healthier, sustainable diets. This together leads to an increased European cultivation and to a decreased overall consumption. And on which areas and how we work on, especially in some of our offices, will tell you my colleagues now. And with that, I'm going to finish my part of the presentation and give the stage to my colleagues.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bertalan Krupa, and I am the soya market analyst of the Donau Soja Association. I'm responsible for composing market reports. And today, in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to speak about 2 topics. The one is I'm talking about the ongoing sowing campaign, which takes place at this moment in Europe. And in the second part, I will give you an insight in the recent price trends of non-GMO soybean in Europe. So firstly, let's see the ongoing soya plantation campaign. I go through some important soya producers regions in Europe, what we expect in these regions, how much soya will be planted compared to the recent years. If we look at the EU, then we see that over the recent years, there was a slight increase, and last year it reached a record high area. But now after the 15% increase last year, now we see that the soya area comes back a bit, and we expect a 5 to 10% decrease this year in the EU. If we look at the different EU countries, we see mixed pictures. And we see that, for example, in Italy, in Hungary, and in Slovakia, we prognose that the area will decrease. But there will be some increase in countries such as France or Poland. Later, I will talk about the driving factors that contribute to the increase or decrease of soya area in the EU and in other soya producer regions. Ukraine, which is the biggest soya producer country in Europe, after the very radical more than 40% increase last year, now in Ukraine we expect a similar size of decrease as in the EU. We say that the soya area goes down a bit by 5 or 10% this season. This is not only our prognosis, but the prognosis of the Agriculture Ministry of the Ukraine as well. And Serbia, we expect a more radical decrease in Serbia. Say that this decrease can be as much as 40% this season. Let's see the main driving factors that contributes to the decrease of area this year in Europe. On the left side, you see the factors that contribute to that rather discourage farmers to soya production. On the right side, you see that rather encourage. So the driving factors are missed. So on the left side, soya prices are at this moment less favorable as last year when the soya area increased so much. And other negative factor that drives a decrease in soya area is the yields and very poor harvest last year. In Eastern and in Middle Europe, there was big dry and hot periods in the summer, and it devastated the yields and also the quality of the seeds. And all of this on the one, firstly, it's still in the memories of the farmers, and it has a bad impact and make a second thoughts for the farmers if whether they plant soya this year. Secondly, the poor quality of the yields of the harvest last year has a radical impact on the seed availability this year. For example, the Balkan region, we saw that Serbia is expected to witness the biggest decrease in area this season. The Balkan region is facing a very severe availability problems with the certified seeds which can be sown. But on the right side, we see some factors that rather encourage farmers to produce more soybean this year. These are in the last months that we saw increasing input prices. For example, the nitrogen fertilizer price increased, and soybean is a less energy and nitrogen intensive crop variety compared to other crops. That's why when we see increasing input prices, it is favorable for soybean production. And there are also long-term trends which we need to take into consideration. In the next slide, 2 slides, I will speak about these long-term trends. It has been already touched on by my colleague that there is a growing demand for deforestation products and also regional products, which is favorable for the local soybean production. And the energy prices are expected to increase further in the next years. It is also favorable for soybean production. And there is a growing consumption of plant-based products, also favorable in this field. And there are also policy intensive, mostly in the EU, for protein and for protein crops and legumes, including soybean, which also drives soybean production. And my second slide's on the long-term trends. Actually the value of self-sufficiency is growing at this moment in the view of the crises that we witnessed over the recent years. We witnessed climate change, COVID, war in Ukraine, trade war, and we don't know what will be the next. The only thing we know that we are living in a more uncertain world, and in an uncertain world, the value of self-sufficiency goes up, and the self-sufficiency in the food sector, and which is one of the weakest points in the EU when we talk about self-sufficiency in the food sector, it is soya. This means that I believe that in the long term, but I also suggest that also in the short term, this will have an impact on the decision of policymakers and market players, and also actually the planting decisions of farmers. Let's see the weather. Now the soya sowing campaign started over the recent weeks. It is in full swing in Europe. And on the left side, we see the typical soya producer regions. And on the right side, we see the areas which which are under the areas of concern category by that this map on the right side was published by DJ Agri in the last days. And if I mix together these maps, we receive this rough map that I created. The red area shows the regions which had very dry periods over the recent weeks and months. This is north Europe, and with green we see that the typical soya producer regions in Europe, and we can conclude that until now the typical soya producer regions in Europe escaped from unfavorable weather. So until now, but we still very early in the season. Until now, we can say that the yields in 5 or 6 months will be okay, but we still have a lot of time and we need a lot of rain to make this in reality. Until now, I was speaking about our forecast and related topics. Now I would like to switch to our second topic, non-GMO prices in Europe. We saw that the non-GMOs, these two lines show two different non-GMO soya price developments in Europe. In the EU, actually, one of them is in northern Italy, other one is southern Germany. Why these two prices are so important? Because these regions are typical non-GMO soya consumer regions. So what is the price in these two regions? This is indicative for the whole EU. And we see that over the last year, the non-GMO soybean prices declined. Actually, the price of non-GMO soybean in Europe is very strongly connected to the global GM soybean market. What happens in Brazil, what happens in US, and what happens in the global market. If actually the local non-GMO price follow the GM global price. And in the global market, over the recent months, we recorded record harvests in the main soya producer regions, primarily in Brazil. And this record crop weighed or put downward pressure on the prices. Beyond the big supply from South America, the global trade also made the US trade war against its trading partners also played an important role to move the prices. And the euro and US currency rate against each other also plays an important role to impact non-GMO soybean prices in the EU. This was the case over the recent weeks. And this is the last 1 year. If we zoom out and we see that what happened, this is the Italian price in northern Italy, actually the Bologna exchange price, which is the most important soybean exchange within Europe. We see that at this moment, the price of it is around 410 euros per ton. And it is lower compared to the price levels in the recent years that we witnessed in the crisis period after 2021, but it is still higher compared to the pre-crisis period. And if we compare this price to the 8-year average that I calculated, we are a bit below. The current price is lower compared to the 8-year average. And just to make some conclusions, now I'm giving you some takeaway messages that we learned today that the soya area is expected to drop in the main soya regions in Europe this season after a big increase in the last season. And the key factors that drive soya area is actually soya price, fertilizer prices, the seed availability played an important role this season, the lack of it actually. And there are also long-term trends that we learned, a wide range of long-term trends that support the soya area expansion in Europe. I expect that in the next years, even in the next year, it will have an important impact, and soy area will increase again, according to my expectation. And today we also learned that global prices actually were declining because of the abundant global supply, and the harvest in South America, mostly in Brazil, played an important role in the recent weeks, and the tariffs of Trump's also contributed to the uncertainties in the soybean market. And finally, if you are interested in more information in the non-GMO soya and plant market or crop market in Europe, then I recommend our two important regular market reports. One of them is the non-GMO soya market report, which is published every month, and the other one is the multi-crop market report, which is published in every 3 months. If you are interested in them, I recommend that you send me an email, and you visit our website. Thank you for your kind attention, and I give the floor back to my colleague Veronica. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bertalan. Thank you for giving this interesting outlook on the sowing season 2025, but also for highlighting the value of self-sufficiency in light of the global developments and crises. We also heard about the challenges and factors influencing soya sowing and cultivation this season. And now the question is, how can we still manage to increase self-sufficiency in Europe, and how can we adapt to those changing climatic conditions? And I am happy to announce that today we have two of our dear Donau Soja colleagues with us from two important soya growing regions in Europe, Ukraine and Serbia. And we will hit it off with Irina Korshaina from Donau Soja, Ukraine, followed by insights from Mirjana Dalošević from Donau Soja in Novi Sad, Serbia. And they are going to provide us with insights from the regions and the activities they are conducting on site. So I'm handing over to Irina now.
Thank you, Veronica. My name is Irina Korchagina. I'm from Donau Soja, Ukraine, and I went just today from Kiev to Vienna, and I'm very happy to provide you in latest information about soybean situation in Ukraine. And in next 10 minutes, I will speak about soybean production in Ukraine, how Donau Soja supports farmers in the region, and why Ukraine is becoming a key part of the European protein solution. Okay, now click to the next slide. Thank you. Let's start with the roots. Ukrainian and European history of soybeans starts with publishing of Friedrich Haberland famous book Die Sojabohne in Vienna, and this book have included the information about field trials across Europe. Next slide, please. You can see there were about 120 field trials with soybeans between 1875 and 1878. In Ukraine was a part from the beginning, we had 3 points field trials in Ukraine, in Zalishiki, in Hust, in Zubra. It is a current Ukraine regions. Next slide. How is the situation now in Ukraine? I will not show you the whole 150 history of yield development in Ukraine, but we will say the professional cultivation in Ukraine starts from beginning of 20s, and the soybean area was stable in recent years, close to 2 million tons. After some conditions, such market prices and export duty reforms, the area started to grow. And in 2022, we can see the area grows to the more than 2 million tons. And last year we had a record in soybean areas in production. And this year we are waiting to have the soybean area in the figures 2.3, 2.5 million tons, and we estimated that the quality of soybeans will be better because the experience and professionality of soybean farmers are going better. The next slide, please. Soybean cultivation is very important for Ukraine because Ukraine is self-sufficient in most agriculture plants, also in soybeans. Under in normal times, Ukraine exports about 75% of grain and also soybean production. The main countries for Ukrainian soybeans and soya mills are the EU countries, Turkey and Egypt. Please, the next slide. This map you have seen today twice time, and I have here to show you to highlight the position of Ukraine on the European soybean belt. Dark green regions are the most are regions with most production of soybeans in Europe, also in Ukraine. This next slide, please. Here you can see the special soybean belt of Ukraine. You can see how their soybean production and yield per hectare is in Ukraine. Especially last year, we had 2.3 tons per hectare, but the middle and large producers received about 3 tons per hectare, thinking to using the certified original soybeans in the best technologies. The next slide, please. Now I can speak more about today's topic, soy yield gap in Ukraine. This information is based on Wageningen University information and Statistic Committee of Ukraine. In soybean yield gap in Ukraine is nearly 0.9 ton per hectare, and without changing soybean areas, Ukraine can receive additional 1.3 million tons more of soybean in next years. Next slide, please. I will speak a bit also about climate changes, especially in Ukraine. On this slide, you can see how the climate changes are moving, are shifting soybean trends in Ukraine especially. We can see that in last 30 years, Ukrainian south regions become more higher and drier, but we speak about potential that central and north regions of Ukraine can grow now more soybeans and bring soybean to the crop rotation. Next slide, please. At Donau Soja, we have development agri-climatic atlas for Ukrainian soybean producers. This atlas includes very important analyzing information about climate changes, about irrigation, about soil characteristic, about water resources, etc. This agroclimatic atlas is available in Ukrainian on our web page of Donau Soja in download section. You can have a look and download it and use it for your work. The next slide. This work is our part of Donau Soja Academy. It is our project at Donau Soja to bring the best practices for soybean cultivation in 5 major soybean countries in Eastern Europe in form of trainings, field days, webinars. In this Donau Soja Academy project is supported by Protein Partnership Program and Austrian Development Agency. Next slide. Especially in Ukraine, under umbrella of Donau Soja Academy, we are running the discussion club since 5 years, mainly in form of webinars. It will organize twice every 2 or 3 months, depending on the topic. On these webinars, we are speaking together with soybean stakeholders, experts. Sorry, my timer is running. about knowledge transfer, and the discussion club meetings are broadcasted per Facebook, and we have a discussion club also in Moldova. Using this possibility and situation, now I would like to invite you to join the next discussion club on the 16th of May with a special topic of organic soybeans. The next slide. Yeah, since last year, the discussion club in Ukraine became to be offline. We have organized master classes during the field day in September, together with our protein partnership partner in Ukraine, Західний Буг. And beginning of this year, we have met farmers in Lemberg, in Lviv region in February. The next slide, please. And I have mentioned also Protein Partnership Program. It belongs also to our Donau Soja Academy, and we are very proud about Protein Partnership Program because it is a very super project program to increase sustainable non-GM soy production in Europe for Europe. And this program, please next slide, runs in 5 countries together with 73 partners. Is sponsored by big retailers. You can see on the right side. And in Ukraine, we are very proud about results from protein partnership programs, because in 3 last years, the program has covered over 1.3 million tons of non-GM soybeans in Ukraine. The Ukrainian farmers receive coverage of certification costs under Donau Soja standards, including GMO and pesticide reduce results, and also verification for deforestation and conservation-free status of soybeans. And last year we started pilot project. 2 years ago we started pilot project in Ukraine on UDR in Ukraine. Next slide, please. If you would like to have more information about our activities in Ukraine, about Donau Soja Academy, Special Soya Discussion Club, or Protein Partnership Program certification in Ukraine, you can write me. I will deliver your questions to my colleagues in here in Vienna or in Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you for this interesting overview on Ukraine as a major soya producer, and also on your activities on site with the aim of closing the yield gap, amongst others. And I found it very interesting also what you presented on the Agri-Climatic Atlas that you mentioned. And this is for sure a very useful tool also in light of current challenges for farmers. And I have the feeling that an extension to more regions will be also very valuable for soy cultivation in Europe in future. And next, I would like to hand over to Mirjana Ladashevich from our Donau Soja office in Serbia, in Novi Sad, a country, as we heard, that has been severely affected by droughts last year. So I'm really looking forward to your presentation and on the overview of the activities that you're doing with the farmers in Serbia.
Thank you, Veronica. Welcome from my side also. As Veronica said, I'm agriculture manager responsible for the region of Serbia, but also here in Novi Sad, we are covering the countries such as Bosnia and Croatia. And I would today update you on the situation regarding the ongoing planting season in Serbia and also our activities related to it. Firstly, I will shortly reflect on last year's season and the soybean situation, actually circumstances that affected this year's sowing. As Bertalan already mentioned, last year we cultivated about 250,000 hectares in Serbia. Unfortunately, the season was marked by severe drought and heat waves during the critical stages of the soybean. You can see at this slide, this photo actually. This photo was taken in the late July, showing that soybeans were already in the ripening phase, far too early for this stage of development. And actually these influenced the output of the soybeans, and average yields dropped to just 1.6 tons per hectares. And the total production was about 30% below the 10-year of national average. So this is pretty poor situation. And this poor performance also impacted the seed quality, as Bertalan mentioned, and availability for this season. And the total area planted with soybeans in this season is expected to decline very significantly by as much as 40 to 50% even, based on current forecasts. I must tell that sowing started two weeks ago, and we are about to finish it. And also, I would like to say that optimal time of sowing of soybean is the end of March, and we started in the middle of April. This we expect also some kind of negative outcomes because of that, but let's see, and fingers crossed. Next slide, please. For several years now, actually, farmers across the Balkan region have been experiencing the impacts of climate change, like heavy rainfalls, floods, also hail during the growing season, and severe drought and heat waves in the peak of the season, and actually uneven distribution of the rainfalls. We must recognize, and farmers must recognize, that these are no longer exceptions. These events represent the new reality that we need to face. It is essential that agriculture producers begin changing their habits, their agriculture practices, to adopt more climate-friendly practices, to adapt their production to these changes, and again, to mitigate these effects of climate change. Our approach, Donau Soja approach, as my colleague Irina already mentioned, focuses on knowledge transfer through various formats, as you can see on this slide: trainings, demonstration fields, farmers visits, organizational farm tours, and even we have individual advisory program in here. So I would like to share more details about what we are planning to do to implement this year in the region of Serbia, Bosnia, and Croatia. This year, we already established soybean demonstration field in collaboration with our partners and our members, some leading actually seed companies and input providers from the region, but also from the Europe. Sowing took place just a week ago on farmer's field, and I must say that this particular farmer has been practicing soybean and even some advanced regenerative agriculture techniques for the past few years, something which is not so widely adopted in Serbia. And our farmers traditionally are doing a lot of plowing, actually deep plowing, a lot of fertilization, and they have pretty narrow crop rotation. So we are performing these trials in order to promote these kind of practices at very advanced farmer. Soybean varieties were sown into cover crops of spinach. Inoculation was carried out, and no mineral fertilizer, no any kind of nitrogen were applied. And this farmer is not applying nitrogen fertilizers for several years, only some organic fertilizers. Through the season, we will apply some immunostimulants and biostimulants, again, that we gain from our members. And also, next, we plan to organize the field days and farm visits, primarily targeting our producers. Next, also we have plans for Croatia and for Bosnia. In these countries, we will organize the farm tours to visit one of the most advanced farmers actually in their region, who are implementing sustainable practices and who are actually achieving pretty much stable yields despite unfavorable weather performances. This will be organized in June. And next. Also, Irina already mentioned that our agriculture activities are implementing within and by support actually of Austrian Agency for Development and also Protein Partnership Program. However, in Serbia, we have one more program. It is IT Food Regenerative Agriculture program that we are performing together in collaboration with EIT Food. The EIT Food is the initiative supported by the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. It is the body of European Union, which brings together industry leaders, startups, R&D sector to promote the innovations and biotechnology in shaping sustainable food future. We will perform this project for 3 years, and project focuses on promoting regenerative agriculture practices, supporting farmers in implementing these practices, and also building peer-to-peer support network for farmers who are undergoing the transition. In this slide, you can also see the other countries who are involved in this project. Next, this project is actually structured in several key stages that we are implementing on annual basis. Over the past 2 years, we already trained about 100 farmers through comprehensive training sessions. During the growing season, we are providing individual advisory support to selected farmers. This begins with some soil sampling and soil analysis, pretty much comprehensive, chemical, physical, biological, and based on this data, we are developing the holistic plan, tailor-made actually plan for each farmer. Then also during the year, we are organizing the public event, aiming to raise awareness regarding some critical issues, such as climate change, soil health, biodiversity, and so on. And I have 2 more slides regarding this program. So next. The topics actually of the greatest interest to our farmers here in Serbia, but also in the region, are minimal soil disturbance, like reduced and conservation tillage, since the majority, as I already said, farmers are implementing the plowing and they do not have experience with any other practices. Also, they're interested in cover crops, in crop diversification, and again, always they are showing interest in the fertilization and optimization actually of the inputs. And the final slide. These are the pictures from our last year public event. We attracted more than 100 participants. We brought actually together representatives from across the entire food sector. We were honored to have speakers also, not only from Serbia, we had speakers from Croatia, from Austria, from Poland, Bulgaria. We will soon begin planning the next edition of this event, and you're all invited to join, or if you have any idea of the topics that we should cover, we are open for that. So this would be all from my side for now, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mirjana. Thank you for those insights and reporting on the important activities that you're doing in your regions, also in light of all the challenges that you're facing. And I think this EIT project is really valuable and really forward-thinking. And I would like to mention that it's in row with a number of projects that we are conducting as an organization. We are participating, we are involved in EU-funded projects like legume generation, microbiomes for soy, and Sonia ProQ. And if you're interested in learning more about the projects and the output, you can find more information on our website, donausoja.org. If you don't know it yet, my colleague will also put the link in the chat. And also I want to mention that Mirjana will be speaking about the topic of mechanical weed management in our next Impulses meeting. It's a meeting, an online meeting exclusively for members. It's taking place on the 13th of May, but I will give you more information on the upcoming events also at the end of this webinar. But first, I would like to thank all speakers for now for your presentations. And I think it's time to address your questions. We already received some beforehand and during the webinar. And I would like to kick off with one question that we received. Actually, we received it more than one time, and it is about our forecast on the potential amount of certified Donau Soja and Europe soya beans in 2025. So as you might know, Donau Soja has developed certification standards, Donau Soja and Europe soya, for sustainable non-GM deforestation and conversion-free soya from Europe. And already in 2024, we had a harvest of around 1 million tons of beans that were certified according to those standards. And also in this season, we expect an output similar to the previous harvest season. But of course, it's a bit early to tell because it also depends on the actual yields this year. The next question from the audience was about the availability and prices of organic soya beans. How are they developing? And I would like to hand over to Bertela. Maybe he can elaborate on that.
Thank you. Actually, this is a question I need to check, so I can come back to this question in email. It's better if I check this information about the organic market.
Okay, Bertela, thank you very much. Also, we will not be able to cover all questions from the audience during this Q&A session, but we will do our best to answer also bilaterally after the webinar to those questions that we are not addressing in this session. The next question I would like to hand over to Irina. It's about the situation of cultivation of non-GM versus GM soya in Ukraine. And also there was a question, like, for me it's a bit cryptical, but I'm sure you know, it is about the import of seeds from Ukraine, disinformation or reality. Can you tell us more about this?
Thank you for the questions. I will start with the first question. You can hear myself. Okay. I will start with the first question regarding GM and non-GM situation in Ukraine. The official situation is as follows. Currently, it is official not allowed to register and to register any variety of GM crops in Ukraine. It means all any volumes and kinds and crops that are cultivated in Ukraine as GM crops are not official, and it is not allowed. And the farmers and producers for official and long-term conditions are choosing the right and official way. And just for reminding that under Donau Soja certification, we have 25% of non-GM soybeans in Ukraine, of non-GM sustainable soybeans in Ukraine. Yeah. And this second question is about import of soybean seeds from Ukraine to European Union. Is it reality or disinformation? It is reality. And this information comes from the follow situation that beginning of April this year, European Parliament recognized Ukrainian seed certification system as relevant to EU standards for soybean. It means that Ukraine can export yearly up to 5,000 tons of soybean seeds from Ukraine to EU as high quality seeds. It will be for around 40,000 hectares soybean area. I hope that questions are answered with this information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ira. Thank you very much. The next question is on key agronomic challenges. What are the key agronomic challenges for soy growers in Central Europe today and predicted for the next years? I think we've already touched this in the presentations, but Mirjana, do you want to answer to this question?
Yes, I can give some insights, but I will probably repeat myself what I already mentioned for the Balkan region. It also applies to Europe in general. It is climatic variability, it is changeable weather patterns, and that many farmers still lack the experience but also skills for soybean production in this changing climate. There is the issue also with the soil health and biodiversity loss, but it is a lot of that are outputs of the climate change. We have an issue with the water availability, and this is a kind of prediction that water will be a key limiting factor. We will have higher demand for irrigation and some precision water management. So I would say that farmers will still need a lot of support from the whole agriculture sector and agri-food sector. Also, farmers are facing with some limited genetic diversity. We have a lack of varieties, I would say, with resilience to stress, to drought stress. So we need to support also breeders. Probably one of the issue is also that we need in some regions more early maturing varieties with a shorter growing season in some regions, you know, to fit that tight agriculture period that we are now facing. Earlier it was March to October, and today it is April, May till September or the end of August. And once again, regarding to farmers, I think that they need to shift their focus to achieving more stable yields under those kind of variable weather patterns, not just, you know, achieving high yields and to obtaining higher yields in some good years. They need to have a more long-term mindset regarding their production. There is also an issue with some kind of pests like mites that in favorable conditions for them, and that is drought and that is high temperatures, are increasing. And we are limited by pesticides. Europe banned a lot of pesticides and the acaricides actually for the mites, and they are dealing with this kind of pests. They don't have actually much tools to deal with that. So this is from the agronomic point of view.
Thank you, Mirjana. Thank you. That's very interesting, and I think also good that you also mentioned some of the solutions that we need for the future to tackle those challenges. I have one more question. It fits best to Bertalan, I think. The question from the audience was if there's any particular insights on the decline expected in Italy. Do you have any more information for us on that?
Thank you for the question. Yes, Italy, which is actually the biggest soya producer in the European Union, actually had a very wet weather during the last harvest period, and it had a very bad impact on the seed quality and also on the harvest. And it contributed to the very severe availability problems of certified seeds this season. As far as I now remember, the volume of available seed was 40% less or something like that. And actually it has a very bad impact, or it discouraged the sector to plant soybean. It is interesting, this was one side, the other side that soya has a wider planting window. So as long as maize needs to be planted earlier, soya can plant even in May. And now there is again a wet weather in Italy, and some farmers cannot plant some crops, for example, maize. And it contributes to the situation that they cannot grow maize, but can grow soybean because they can plant it later in May when the weather is likely to be drier. So these are the two factors that play important role here, how much area we will see in Italy. But the outcome of these two factors is that actually we are going to see, this is our prediction, a decrease of soy area in Italy this season.
Thank you very much, Bertalan. I think we can close the Q&A session for now. All the questions that haven't been answered, please be assured that we will try to answer them bilaterally by email. And I would like to summarize also for myself that what we've heard is that there's a slight decrease happening after a record harvest in many regions last year, but also that we have to look at the long-term trends, as Bertalan mentioned. And there are a lot of crises and developments on an international level that highlights again the importance of and the value of protein self-sufficiency for Europe. And we know there are a lot of challenges, but with every challenge also comes solutions. And we are really happy that we're such a great and big network of different stakeholders, making actions, setting actions, and working together towards this goal of sustainable protein supply for Europe. And I would like to, before we close today's session, to list here the upcoming events that we have planned for you. There is a next Impulses meeting happening on the 13th of May on the topic of weed management and biostimulants. I'm really looking forward to this event. It's a members-only event happening online. It's part of a series, the Impulses series for members. The next one is the webinar on how branded data sets can strengthen SBTI and CSRD climate strategies. My colleague Chris, he will be moderating and will bring this topic to you. And we also have guest speakers on this topic, and it will be online again, a webinar. But this one is public, also available to non-members. And I would like to mention that the registration is already open, so you can already register. And another event is our annual Donau Soja General Assembly and Networking Event 2025. This year, the date is the 4th of September. It will take place in Vienna, Austria, and I'm really looking forward to meeting many of you again at this year's General Assembly, where we will also elaborate on many of the topics that we have addressed today. And I think it will be, again, a very nice meeting point for members. But also, if you're not a member yet, I would just show you the Impulses meeting, as I mentioned, is for members only, and also the morning session of the General Assembly. But if you're not a member yet, you can get a glimpse of our network also at the webinar on the 4th of June, and the afternoon session of the General Assembly, the networking event on 4th of September, will be open also to non-members. And soon we will open the registration for that. So if you want to get a glimpse of the network, of our work, this is the perfect opportunity to do so. All right. There's also another link that you received in the chat. It's the direct link where you can see all our upcoming events, and also where you will find the link to register for the upcoming events. And with that, I would like again to call out to you, everyone in this meeting who is not a member yet, consider becoming a member and really join us in our common vision of a sustainable, safe, and European protein supply. You will find the QR link here again. And to every one of you, thank you for joining today. Thank you for your interest, for your questions, and for our common work for a better future. And I also want to thank my colleagues, my dear colleagues who have been speakers today and gave us an insight into their work. All right, and with that, thank you for participating today, and we really look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you, bye.
Bye-bye.